Karen is the Chief Community Services Officer at the United Way of Buffalo and Erie County. The Chief Community Service Officer advances United Way's mission by developing opportunities to create sustainable change through the use of community members' time, talent, contributions, and expertise. She has over 30 years experience in the not-for-profit industry and leadership, direct service, administrative positions. In her career, Karen has received recognition as Business First 40 Under 40 honoree and a Medaille College Distinguished Alumni. Welcome. She's also a Leadership Buffalo class of 1991. So
Yep.
welcome, Karen.
Thank you.
Tara Ellis. Tara will say hello, so you pop out.
Hi, good afternoon.
Thank you. Tara is truly committed to this community and the amazing neighbors who make this best place, make this the best place to live on earth. Tara is also a 40 Under 40 distinguished alumni, and she also an honoree, and she also is a distinguished alumni from Syracuse University, where she received her graduate degree. Her career has spanned the world of politics and government, corporate America, and academia, but her true passion is in the nonprofit arena, where she currently serves as the president and CEO of FeedMore Western New York, the merged entity of Meals on Wheels for Western New York and the Food Bank of Western New York. Tara, welcome.
Thank you.
Pirro, Jessica, can you wave and say hello?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Jessica Pirro has been with Crisis Services for 21 years. In 2014, she was the first female to be appointed the Chief Executive Officer, and she leads the agency's crisis first responders, helping those impacted by crisis with specialty areas around suicide prevention, emergency mental health, addiction, trauma, domestic violence, rape, and elder abuse. Jessica serves our community in various capacities, leading coalitions and committees on suicide prevention, reducing mental health stigma. She serves as a project coordinator for the newly developed Suicide Fatality Review Team for Erie County. She's a member of the New York State Suicide Prevention Advisory Council, and she serves as a board member for the National Association of Crisis Organization Directors. She's also a Leadership Buffalo grad. Of what year?
03.
All right. So welcome, ladies. We really appreciate you taking the time. We know how busy you are. The three of you have so many things going on in your organizations, and taking this time to be with us today is really appreciated. So I'm going to ask you all the same question for the first question. So the first one, and I will start with Karen on this one. Karen, can you talk to the audience about what do you feel is the biggest issue or concern your organization is facing right now?
Well, I would say the biggest issue we face is trying to figure out how to respond quickly to the needs of the not-for-profits, because those are the groups that we support the most, trying to help them figure out how to serve their clients in a direct service way, and being able to connect everybody who wants to help with the most efficient and effective ways to help. We've been pleased with what we've been able to do so far, but this is only the beginning. We know there's a lot of a long road of recovery. So I think that's really a key issue, is trying to figure out what's that going to look like and what's the most efficient way to do it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Same question, Tara. What do you feel, besides feeding all these people that you're trying to feed, what do you think is the biggest issue your organization is facing right now?
I would say that, you know, it's not just one issue, to be honest. Right now, it's the fact that our entire distribution model continues to change and evolve as this crisis has been changing and evolving. In addition to that, we're really struggling with the food pipeline. We have trucks that we have ordered because, you know, we get full semis full of food delivered. 5 of our semis have been canceled over the past few weeks, and we've had several others postponed into August already. So that's a really scary thing, because we've just pumped out 1.5 million pounds of food in the last month. And that is only on our food bank side. It doesn't even include what we're doing on the Meals on Wheels side. So without that availability of product, you know, we really need to make sure that we are feeding people, that no one is going hungry, but also that we can be able to backfill that pipeline so that we can continue to feed people. As we know, this crisis is going to go on for quite a long time. This isn't going to end when the pause order stops. So just trying to juggle all of that and determine how best to ensure that we are taking care not only for today, but planning for the future sustainability as well.
Thank you. That sounds like an awfully daunting task that you have in front of you. So if anybody wants to donate food or themselves to deliver the food, let her know. Jess Pirro, what is, same question, the biggest issue your organization is facing at this time?
Well, similar to Tara's comments, I think for us at Crisis Services, it's an evolving kind of issue of the day and potentially the hour, depending on the needs of the community. I think one of the main issues for us is, in addition to our physical safety, our organization as the crisis center is really assuring the mental health safety of our community at this time. So being able to sustain this pace for our staff is definitely an issue that has been a little bit more of a priority of focus over this past week. I think, we can survive on adrenaline for a period of time, but this is something that's more longer term than we can anticipate. So I think one of the things we're evaluating from an issue perspective is our care and well-being of our first responders, not only here at Crisis Services, but throughout this community, and the trauma and mental health impacts and effects that I know we're going to see increase daily as we head into this next several weeks of this particular crisis. So those are definitely some areas we're kind of addressing from an issue perspective.
Thank you. Thanks. Ed. You have a lot on your plate as well right now. So I'm going to ask you this question. This was a question I think I'm going to ask all three of you, but Karen, I'll start with you. How have you adapted your leadership style during this crisis, if at all?
Well, I guess I thought about that question a little, and in the immediate response, I think I have been more communication with the team that works for me and with our entire organization to try to reassure everybody that our health and safety of our employees and our community comes first, and that everything we do has to be held up still looking at our mission and our vision for the community. And then we have to react much more quickly and much more urgently than we may have in the past. So I think I'm communicating a lot more. I think that's been a change, but I don't think the overall style that I use has changed dramatically. I'm still very inclusive and try to make sure that we have everybody on board before we make decisions.
Thank you for sharing. Thanks. And I work with you quite often, so I do know that you are a very inclusive leader. So thanks for sharing that. Tara, same question, if you can answer that.
I'm not really sure if my leadership style necessarily has changed. I'm always pretty hands-on and pretty involved, and Jay's on the call, so he's probably going, oh dear Lord, I wish she wasn't as hands-on as she is. But I think in this instance, we really do have to all be all hands on deck. So I do hope that leaders everywhere are not taking a step back. I hope they're stepping forward into the work, because right now our teams, I think, need us more than ever. They need to see us working side by side with them. I think it's a scary, uncertain time. And I think it's really critical for each one of us to put anything else kind of behind us and really focus. I think Jess made a wonderful point. If we're not focusing on our team, then our team can't be focusing on the community. We really have to be working hand in hand with them. So if anything, I hope that I'm focusing more on making sure that I'm supporting them in whatever ways they need support right now.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And Jess, same question. If your leadership style has changed, how have you changed as a leader during this time?
I think for myself, I definitely reflected on that after the first week, because you have all these eyes looking at you to make all the decisions that need to be made. That happens every day, but these decisions are being made many, like by the hour, especially for the first several weeks. So for me, I had to kind of reflect on that a little bit. And what I have seen in myself is, I am an inclusive leader, but I feel like what we've had to do is really evaluate who does need to be involved and what level of the decisions that need to be made, just because there's so many moving parts here in the various departments we manage. But also a lot of coaching and a lot of just normalizing feelings and really being very honest how I'm feeling, to really make people more comfortable to have an open communication right now, so that we can be successful. So I feel, for myself, I have seen a little shift depending on the situation, and also maybe being a little more directive than I usually would be, because time is of the essence and we can't process things, forever. The decisions had to be made. So I think I have seen a couple things shift, but in a way that's helping to really role model and build my team, so they're feeling more confident in what they have to decide every day as we manage through this crisis.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. The three of you are already superb leaders, and so that you've even had to step it up a little bit even more is a lot, because you guys are already doing a great job in your leadership. Karen, this question is for you. So what are your top priorities as a leader during this time? And are they different from prior to the pandemic?
Well, I don't know if they're different, but certainly the health and safety of our employees and their families comes first in a way that it probably never has before. It was kind of something we took for granted, but this has put that front and center. And then making sure that everybody understands the work that has to get done now and we're all rowing in the same direction. And that sometimes that means that other things that used to be important are no longer important for us to follow along with. And then helping people to really understand work-life balance, because we're finding the stress that was already mentioned by our other two panelists, that it's affecting everybody and sometimes they don't realize it. So we have to step back and make sure that we're embracing the fact that we're all going through some changes and some need for mental health services or timeouts or whatever it might take. And we have to model that as leaders as well as talk about it. So if we're working 24 hours a day and sending emails as an example, we need to step it back a little bit and think about the long-term implications.
Trying to keep that routine is important because we're not going to all be sitting in our pajamas and working at home. Yeah, that's a good point, Karen. Thank you. And to the audience, we will be asking, I see your questions coming up in the chat room and we will get to those. We do have some questions we want to ask the panelists first. So this question is for Tara. Can you talk a little bit about what you've learned about your teams during this crisis?
So I don't know if it's so much what I've learned about my team as much as I've definitely seen all of those characteristics that you see glimpses of in everyday life really enhanced and exacerbated as we work through a crisis. So, you really, in many instances, see the absolute best of people. People are hardworking, passionate, compassionate about the work that they do. It's been interesting to watch as this has evolved that, some of those folks, you thought they were giving 200% already. Somehow they find another 300% to put into the work, support their teams, really bring their A+++ game. So I've really been proud of this team as they have, really found it within themselves. And that doesn't mean that they are being robots. I mean, we have team members that are having a moment that they're breaking down in tears or sharing a story about their grandmother that they're, afraid is vulnerable. And, I had a team member in the very beginning days share that she was really afraid that because of her age, she could make one of our clients sick just by bringing food to her home. And, I really think that we're seeing a lot of raw human emotion, much more so than we did prior to COVID. But also I think people are finding inner strength that they might not even have been aware that they possessed. And I'm also seeing some of our team members really struggle and I've seen levels of anxiety among them. And actually I've spoken to Jess about this for a little bit of, help and guidance for how we can help them. I'm not a mental health professional and that's definitely outside my wheelhouse, to make sure that they're staying safe in ways that we really hadn't been so acutely attuned to before. So it's been an interesting journey. And, so the question that you asked Karen before, I think, at least for myself as a leader, I spend a lot of time, hoping and praying and wishing that the decisions that we're making so rapidly with the ever-changing information in front of us are the right decisions for our teams, for our volunteers, for our clients. We try our best with the information at hand. And I think that in some ways, I think it's helpful for the team to see your human side and, even to see us making some mistakes and learning as we go along as they are as well.
So do you think that, I'm just going to add on to this one. So what you're saying, do you think you've exposed some unanticipated strengths and weaknesses in your team and things that you have to probably work on with some people moving forward? Like you have time for that right now?
Absolutely. And in some instances, you have to work on it right then in the moment. It's not always an issue of time, as an issue of the reality is somebody is in an acute crisis themselves right at that moment, trying to determine how they can manage their own emotions around the realities that, COVID has placed in their path. And in some instances, it's just a wow, thank you so much for really stepping up. I didn't expect that from that individual. I knew they were great, but now they're beyond great. And it's a relief to know that some of these weights are being shifted around and taken off of team members that might not be in a great place at that moment in time. So I definitely think we're seeing some cracks in the veneers for some individuals, some areas of opportunity for growth. And I do think that when this is all said and done, we will find that there are some people that maybe aren't cut out for this work. Being in very direct service, it's not easy. And I think for some of them, they may be discovering through this that, you know, wow, that this is a different angle than I maybe feel comfortable with or am ready for. And others are just being more inspired and more excited by the work that we're doing. I think it's kind of that and everything in between.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Jess, question for you. As the coronavirus unfolded, what triggered your call to action as a leader to assess your organization's needs and response?
You know, as this conversation started to unfold, we were actually starting to look at this back in the beginning of March, maybe end of February, beginning of March, you know, as we were starting to monitor kind of the evolution of this coming our way. But really the trigger was the first you know, in addition to our conversations for how we were going to respond as a community to our community, knowing that this was happening. The first positive case in Erie County shifted our leadership focus very quickly. You know, when that case happened, that Sunday was a full afternoon of a Zoom call with my leadership team to evaluate how are we going to address Monday. What are some of the things we need to quickly change? What are some of the service delivery approaches we need to evaluate? I think what's, you know, been interesting for us is that our services can't just stop. And so, especially our emergency mental health services, our staff are still in high risk, suicidal mental health crisis situations. We still are doing a physical intervention response with all of significant safety precautions, but how to work with staff to be okay with that or not, you know, if they're not, then what do we do for reassignments of responsibilities? So there was a lot of questions we were just kind of floating around to evaluate how are we going to take Monday and then Tuesday and then Wednesday. And then what do we need to do to protect our space, which was something we did very quickly of reduction of meetings and trainings and other things that we needed to change in addition to then determining a remote blended model for our operations. So really that, you know, for us, we have a lot of disaster planning already in place, but it tended to be more weather related. So this brought a very different level of evaluation, but we were able to quickly pivot, you know, and look at how are we going to evolve the protections of our team in order to protect them, to also protect our community who are the most vulnerable with the cases that we tend to manage here at Crisis Services.
Yeah, you guys are in, you know, the front lines, just like with Tara as well, and you can't not be exposed with people. So you've got a little bit more risk than others. So thank you. I was like saying today that we all live in these 2-week moments, like just what's happening in the next 2 weeks. You know, you can't, and as leaders, we like to have a little bit more control than that. So not happening at this time. So I'm going to go to questions from the audience because there's quite a few here. This one is for everyone, but probably mostly appropriate for Karen. How can nonprofits capture the attention of funders and donors when they are not like FeedMore and Crisis Services, who are very active during COVID? Lots of nonprofits are not able to fully deliver their services and have programs shut down. On top of that, big fundraisers have been canceled.
Well, we certainly share their concern because we're looking at the need for those services to continue. Right now, there may be a pause, but unfortunately, in the immediate rush before the government funding could get in place and all of those other things, we did direct our attention more towards critical services like food, housing, mental health, that type of thing. We're beginning to pivot and take a look at what's happening next. The way not-for-profits can help us is answering surveys, which people have done, participate in the various different calls, make sure we're knowing what you're doing and we're sharing what we're also doing so that we can find where that common ground is going to happen. That's what I mean in terms of a challenge for United Way looking at a recovery mode. Our own fundraising took a dip as this became more clear. We were ending our campaign, so we saw a reduction in that. We've seen a lot of giving related directly to the crisis, but there's a middle space there that we're not clear ourselves on what it's going to be, but communication is going to be key. And we do recognize the critical importance of all of those services.
Thank you. Yeah, we've all been affected by that. So there was another question about fundraising that maybe Justin, Tara can also weigh in on. we had to cancel a lot of events, and I've seen a lot of things go virtual and online. Have you ladies in your organization, have you been trying to do any fundraising? I know you still have a lot of services you're providing and needs that you have, and there's a lot more money being spent that you probably had budgeted for. So can you talk a little bit about how fundraising efforts have been affected and how they've been shifted and new ways of possibly thinking of doing things?
Sure. I think for us, we have been doing a lot of communication out to our listserv and our donors about what we're doing. And also the ask to continue to support us during this time, that this is the unexpectedness of obviously the situation, the unknowns of ongoing costs and support that we're going to be faced with. We've been fortunate to be able to tap into some resources that, you know, are quickly evolving, but that's not going to sustain what the needs are going to be, especially for, I think, organizations both like Tara and ours. I think just the engagement with our current donors, we have seen a few gifts from our donors that have come in because of the work that we're doing. We are looking at more of like a campaign, if you will, which isn't something we usually do, but more of an online campaign right now as well, as we head into May. But we are also in that space that a lot of nonprofits are, of evaluating, you know, our event usually isn't until the fall, you know, in October. So for us, it was kind of like, well, we can wait and see. But even now, the feeling is, can we even really do that? Are people even going to be wanting to come to an event, you know, until a vaccine is in place? And, you know, those unknown questions are answered. So we are making a decision very shortly here about what we plan to do with that event. But then we have to figure out what are some other ways to bring dollars in. Is there other funding opportunities, foundations, or grants that we might need to be going towards? And then what are some other things that we can maybe work with some of our existing donors to maybe contribute and invest in this time? So it's a big deal, I know, for every nonprofit, because it's part of our budget is the fundraising dollar. And, you know, we don't have a pandemic budget line right now. You know, we need to fill that. And but we're all in the same needs. So that's, I think, what's hard. But I think we do have to be a little more creative to engage the community differently for investing in our various missions at this time. But I don't see a lot of events happening this year. And I think that, you know, I know people have been pushing them out or rescheduling them. But I think as we head into May, I think we're all coming to the realization that probably this year is not going to be an event year. So we have to reconsider, what do we do to fill that gap?
We're all going through this, and every nonprofit is. And unfortunately, I think the ones that are pulling at people's heartstrings right now, food and housing and mental health, are the ones that are going to get the most attention. So hopefully United Way and people in the public can really start to think about, it's not just the work they're doing in the nonprofits, but it's also the people that work there at the nonprofits. This is their livelihood. This is sometimes how salaries get paid. So it's good things to be thinking about. Tarek, have you changed? I have a question from the audience specific for you. In this immediate moment, is donating food or donating money more needed? And also, can you weigh in on the fundraising question?
Absolutely. Frankly, we need both. So we are desperate for canned proteins, fruits, and vegetables. Right now, we are starting to see some of those trickle in based on some wonderful media we received last week, but we really need more a flood than a trickle, to be honest. So the more we can get of, you know, peanut butters and canned proteins and vegetables and fruits would be huge. But obviously, some people are still uncomfortable about, you know, coming to a virtual a contactless food drive. So funds we can turn into food. So really it is whatever that donor is feeling comfortable with. In terms of fundraising overall, a couple things on that. One, our big event actually is May 20th. So we are transitioning it to a virtual fundraiser. We have never done this before. It's a little bit of the Wild West for us. We are going to be learning and watching from the model from our friends at Habitat for Humanity. They have turned their event into a virtual event. And we're really hoping to learn from them and figure it out, fingers crossed, because as Jess mentioned, we really are reliant on those fundraising dollars. And, you know, we have been very blessed. We have gotten a lot of media coverage and we are getting COVID grants. But, our concern is, what happens, the COVID grants are wonderful, but we also need that money for general operating support. And so we're a little concerned about turning the dollars from a general operating support grant to COVID dollars, because we still need to keep the lights on. We still need to pay our staff. We still need to do all of those things that are required for long-term sustainability. So it's a little bit of a delicate balance to make sure that, when Funder A comes to us and says, we've decided to turn your grant into a COVID grant, it's a bit of a mixed blessing, because we definitely do need that general operating support as well.
Thanks, Tara. Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot to think about there. So let's kind of stay on this same technology topic and fundraising topic. So Karen, I'm going to turn this to you, because the question from the audience is, are you starting to use, or do you plan on using the new technology that we've all become very proficient in the last 6 weeks to help cut down in-person interaction while still delivering your services, but also for fundraising opportunities, such as virtual fundraising events? So Karen, you want to take that one first, and then all three of you ladies can answer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Similar to what Tara said, it is the wild, wild west as we try to do this, but we're going to do a virtual fundraiser for our community baby shower, which normally we encourage people to gather together and hold a little baby shower and then donate diapers and sleep sacks, etc., to the United Way, and we would get them out to agencies that needed them. Well, we're going to switch it up, make it virtual, have people actually buy the stuff online in baby bundles, see how that goes, because the need is still there. So we'll see how that happens. We're really looking toward the fall campaign, when it's the traditional United Way time, and thinking in terms of what kind of video messaging can we do, what kind of online promotions can we do to keep the interest up, but not have to physically show up in workplaces and distribute pledge cards. Everything is going to probably become much more electronic. We're lucky because we've already done electronic campaigns, so it's not new to us, but I have a feeling that the breadth and scale of it will be new. We do anticipate that companies are going to put a lot more people, or allow more people to work remotely on a more regular basis. So right away, that type of interaction, reaching people, gathering them together in a room, trying to give them a message, that all is going to have to change.
Yeah, as a member of your Women United, we canceled every event for the rest of the year. So unfortunately.
Well, like Tara said, we assume that there's not much possibility that we're going to be able to pull off any kind of event. We went as far as the year end right now, because we think people are going to be unhappy or unable to really get over some of their fears. So let's try to find a better way to do it and still get the resources we need.
Yeah, I've never had such a clear schedule in my entire professional life, which is okay. Jess, can you answer that question too, as like looking at technology? You talked a little bit about your virtual event for the fundraiser, but talking about, do you plan on using technology, continuing to cut down on the in-person interaction and still delivering the same services that you do?
Yeah, we've seen, especially over the last several weeks, a few things kind of evolve for some of our departments that do community education and training. So really moving that in-person curriculum to an online forum is something that has evolved pretty quickly, and I anticipate actually that continuing. It was something we've been, it's been interesting with this whole thing. There's a lot of things that were on our to-do list that got done pretty quickly over the last 6 weeks. So in a way, there's goals being checked off our strategic plan left and right here, because we, can get it done pretty quickly. But I think that in regards to our service, like direct service, obviously the hotline, that isn't necessarily an issue per se, because people are still going to be calling in, and that is a protected way to, obviously communicate. It's still with our emergency mobile services that we've had to adapt to kind of more phone interventions to prove telemental health approach, but also we still will need to do in-face interventions for certain situations. So I think that will probably integrate for some of our education, some of our meetings, also maybe some of the client work with people being more comfortable in this fashion. We're seeing clients adapting to it. So that's a positive as well. So I think there's definitely benefits we're going to be pulling from this. We've already mentioned that in our conversations with our leadership team about what are the, the positives are kind of, we have our kind of some things that we've named here, like our COVID wins and our COVID, outcomes or whatever, just to have a little humor. But what are the things that are going to stick? And what are the things that we want to evaluate going forward and doing it in a more thoughtful way than maybe what we've been able to do over the last several weeks. So I do anticipate, an integration in some capacity, as well as scheduling with our staff, maybe some more flexibility than we've been able to offer in the past. That might also help with recruitment. So there's some, good positive things that we're already starting to identify out of this experience.
Yeah, it's been a challenging time for everybody, but we're actually ourselves in our smaller organization are seeing a lot of ways that we can utilize technology moving forward for a lot of things, new offerings, and also streamlining efficiencies. So it's great. Tara, can you talk, you're more in the face-to-face people business than the rest of the group here. But can you talk about, are you looking at technology to try to do business differently as you move forward after the crisis calms down?
In some ways, yes, but truly for us, as Althea, from the work that you have done personally with us, it's been interesting because it's actually been very hard for many of our clients, particularly our homebound clients. They're actually used to having the volunteers come into the home, give them a hug, touch them on the shoulder, those bits of, really close connectivity that they don't get from anyone else in the world. Their children, maybe in Phoenix and Hawaii, our volunteers are their family. So, for that audience, really the physical component is a piece that everybody is looking forward to returning. We have added companion calls into our program, so that's a real positive takeaway for us. But we really want that to be an enhancement, not a replacement as it currently is. But I do think we would continue our companion calls, and we've identified some individuals that we've referred to Jess's program, and we've identified some individuals that we've, talked through situations with their families. It's helping us to get to know our clients a little bit more intimately. So I do think that there will be a little bit of a balance and some changes. In terms of, the telecommuting aspects, we are doing it right now by necessity to help manage some of our team members, personal family issues, children that aren't in school, their own levels of anxiety, whatever the case may be that is driving that. But it actually puts a tremendous strain on our staff because of the high level of direct work that we do. So I don't know that that's something that we would necessarily look to continue forever, because we'd have to increase our staffing levels, which puts a heavier burden on the budget. So some things yes, some things no. How's that for a long answer to a short question? Yeah.
Great answer. One of my favorite things to do is volunteer at the food bank and pack and sort sort food. And I have not been able to do that. And so, I'd be there if we weren't going through this. So I want to move into a little bit of different direction. So again, you talked a little bit in the beginning about your leadership style and working with your teams. And what are some of the things you're doing creatively with your teams? Some people are doing, virtual lunches and happy hours and different things like that, and sending gift cards. So, but also more importantly, what are you doing for yourselves? You're in very stressful jobs and you're working with the public that is great, has great needs. What is the self-care that you're doing? And I hope you are doing something because you're important to this community. So Karen, let's start with you on that one. What are you doing for your teams, and how you keep the culture up and their mental, their health and their positivity, and keeping them engaged?
Well, the good news for United Way is we have some really active employee groups that we've been able to keep active. We've started using Slack as a channel to communicate. We have a United in Health committee that does a daily update that's either motivational or something about exercising, something health related. We have a 742 crew, and that group has always sent birthday cards and those kinds of messages, but now they're doing a virtual happy hour, quote unquote, so every so often, or a coffee break. A couple of our teams automatically started doing virtual coffee breaks. And we've added more staff meetings, more Zoom meetings, because we felt like people felt like they were disconnected. So we're trying to do those kinds of things. But we were blessed because we already had a lot of good things in place that were easy to put into the virtual space. In terms of self-care, I'm lucky because my husband is here and we like to walk. So we keep up our walking every day. And if I can pull it off, I try to take a walk at least a couple afternoons a week so that you get away from the computer and really get a little bit of space. So it's been harder though, because I know someone else mentioned going to the gym. That's hard. You know, you used to be able to do those things and you can't now, but I also like to read. So I start reading and you kind of forget everything. You get locked into the book and you forget what's really going on in the world.
Thank you for sharing. And we just were talking that it would be nice if the weather would cooperate so we could get outside and walk, but always have to look on the bright side of things, and we're not down south. We're not losing our homes to tornadoes. So we have to look at it in the positive spin. So Jess, I'm going to ask you the same question. So what are you doing with your teams? I know I heard a few today on the call we were on this morning, but also self-care for yourself.
Yeah, so for the teams, it's been interesting. It was this past couple weeks where they started identifying, we all kind of feel tired, so we're trying to kind of come up with some fun ways to kind of lift up how people are feeling, because we really would really take away from each other and re-energize from each other when we were together. And it's hard when now we're not. And I know for me personally, walking through the halls here and having the silence is really, it's just, it's been hard. It's really been hard. So we actually started right off the bat, knowing our team. Our board of directors have been wonderful. They put together a staff food fund for us. So we've been able to do some catered, individually wrapped meals for all of our shifts, being a 24-hour entity, kind of keeping them fed and cared for. We've also been doing some videos from community members, other partners, kind of just a thank you and letting people know that they care and that they're there. And we also have some other fun goodies and things that we're going to be sharing. We also did a fun thing with a local dance company. They put together the move of the day. And so we're sending those out for everybody to get up and move around. I know for myself, I could be sitting for 4 hours sometimes and not realize I sat that long. So, some fun little things to remind people about self-care. We've been doing a lot. I do a regular communication to the team, offering, how I'm doing, how I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, and kind of resources and some information that might be helpful to them as well. So we do also regular supervisions with our staff. So those have really gotten back into a good groove, so that there's some one-on-one time with their supervisor, and our staff meetings have kind of gotten back into a good groove as well. So it's those engagements that I think has been helpful for the teams to reconnect. And some of them have been doing their own little coffee hours and things like that through Zoom. So that's been great. For me personally, it's, the first probably 2.5 to 3 weeks, I was working nonstop and kind of survived on adrenaline, I think. I was surprised how well I actually felt, which was kind of weird in a way. But then I realized 3 weeks in, I hadn't worked out. I hadn't done the things that I usually would do for my self-care. So trying to reintegrate that for myself. It's hard at home though to do a workout routine, especially I have dogs and they don't understand and they're trying to jump up on me and things like that. But taking a walk, just enjoying a movie, taking advantage of all of the online things. I spent, almost 3 hours last Friday night watching the Phantom of the Opera and just, really enjoyed that. So I'm realizing the attentiveness I need to do to those types of things and kind of change how I'm thinking, what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what I'm hearing. So I've been really working hard on that, and my husband and son help with a lot of humor at home. So that keeps me going.
Yeah, and your husband being in law enforcement, he's getting just as much stress as you are. So I actually finally figured out how to hook up my Amazon account to my smart TV. So
yeah. Yeah, we did that too. Yeah, we did that.
More movies. It's been great. Tara, same question. What are you doing? Your team is under a lot of daily stress, and also yourselves, you're probably working 24/7 like the rest of the ladies. So what are you doing to help your teams with their morale and their mental health, and also yourself?
So when it comes to the team, we've done 2 virtual staff meetings using Zoom, and I was a little hesitant about how that would be and how it would be perceived initially. I think it was really necessary. I think it really did help our teams understand that we are here, we're concerned about them. Our first meeting, we were flooded with questions. We literally, the whole time we were speaking, questions were popping into the chat room. And I think people were so highly anxious in that very beginning time they were asking the same questions. We would answer the question, somebody else would ask the same question. They couldn't even really process the questions being asked. They were just so overwhelmed by what was happening around them. I think we saw a really large evolution, 2-3 weeks later when we did the next staff meeting, where it seemed like the feedback we were getting was more feedback and thoughts and, a couple questions, but it was just, to me, much more strategic, thoughtful. It was much less fear. I felt a lot less anxiety in that second staff meeting. The team has been really heavily supported by this community. We've had over 2,000 individuals onboarded as volunteers in the past 5 weeks, which has been both overwhelming and a blessing all at the same time. But I think the messaging to our team has been, this community is with you. And I think that means so much to them to know that Western New York is standing behind, and underneath and bolstering them. We've had really, random individuals that call and say, I just want to buy lunch for the team. How do I do that? DeBella's reached out and said, you guys have, been supporters of ours, and, we want to be a supporter of yours. We're sending subs over next Friday. So there's been lots of little things like that I think we've seen support from the community. And one of our board members actually recently reached out and sent us a video. He just taped himself on his iPhone, basically telling the team how much they meant to him and how much their work was appreciated in this community. So we're reaching out to some of our other board members to say, hey, would you consider doing the same thing? I think hearing from you that you are aware of their work will be meaningful to them. And the staff loved it. They love hearing that a board member is aware of what they are doing and what they are going through. So I really think that some of those things are beginning to help. I think we have to continue to do them. We also we're very, very, very blessed. And I almost hesitate to say this because I realize many organizations and many companies are not this fortunate, but our board did support us giving a little bit of an incentive pay. It was 10%, and it was for all of the individuals working on site. And, for some people that was as modest as $3. We do have lots of people that work part-time. So it wasn't like this was big bucks that were going to them. Nobody got, thousands of dollars. I mean, it was anywhere from $3 to, a couple $100. But the impact that made on our team was unbelievable. I mean, people sending us notes and, geez, thanks so much for thinking of me. My neighbor got laid off and I had an extra $20 in my paycheck. It meant so much. So, these may not seem like overwhelmingly huge gestures, but I think to the individuals to know that they're being recognized, acknowledged, supported is more meaningful than even sometimes we realize as leaders. Even just the attaboys. We were told by somebody the other day, they were stunned that a couple of our leadership team went into the back of the commissary and thanked them for what they did. They couldn't believe that, the management took the time with everything that was going on to come back and do that. And it didn't even occur to me as really being meaningful. It felt like the right thing to do, but to them, it was really meaningful. In terms of self-care, I am probably the absolute worst on the planet. Jess is nodding her head like, yes, I know. I yell at her all the time. Jess is a friend, and Althea also knows I absolutely stink. I do love to read, but I'll be honest, I'm so tired by the time I'm, getting home at, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night and, planning to be back in here at 6 in the morning. I'm just kind of shot. So what I've been doing is really junk food TV watching. So I've been watching Sherlock, the BBC Sherlock series, things that are interesting and engaging, but really require very little intellectual investment because I have no brain left by that point of the evening anymore. But I'm very cognizant of the fact that I do need to do a better job of self-care, A, just in general, and B, now. So I really need to start getting back to a walking routine, something where fresh air is involved. If it would break 50 degrees, that would be super helpful. But, I do know that that's important. I need to focus more on it. It's definitely a failure of mine as a leader and a human.
Well, girls' night when this is over, all right? We'll definitely have a girls' night, Tara. So I want to kind of combine a question here, and I'm going to ask all three of this question. So with the increased awareness of operating costs for nonprofits, do you think there will be an increase in grant money available for operations? And part two of that, hold on, if I can scroll down here. As leaders of the organizations you run, have you started to think about the recovery phase and what that will mean for operations, human capital needs, as many have asked about, but what kind of operational funding will you be needing at the end of the year? And have you given any thought to where that's going to come from? So Karen, we'll start with you. That probably is going to be the last question, but we'll see.
Yeah, like ask me a really tough question. Yes, we're thinking about the recovery phase, and yes, we're trying to figure out what the future actually holds, but it's been an kind of a frustrating experience to date to try to sort it out. United Way's in a good position in that we have a fairly good balance sheet and that type of thing. So it's not urgent, but it's soon that we have to look at that. And more importantly to us is figuring out how to support the not-for-profits that we fund and those in the future we'd like to fund. I think it's going to be a long process to figure out the answer to a lot of those questions. In terms of operations, I really do hope that funders and in particular individual donors who get way too caught up in my mind about administrative costs now realize that you cannot put an agency like FeedMore or Crisis Services or even United Way in place when the crisis happens. If these agencies were not here now, we wouldn't be able to respond immediately. So I'm really hoping, though I don't have a high degree of hope because it seems like people forget these things as soon as a crisis is over. So I don't know, operating is just never sexy to people, even though we know that that is the lifeblood of the services being provided.
Thank you, Karen. That's great information. Jess, same question.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I am seeing some conversations in strategy around, funding and support, but it is kind of, there's so much being thrown together right now. So what I'm curious to see is how it's going to really shake out. And then also what are the other expenses, especially as a state, that may then cut other areas to feed those expenses. So I don't know if we're, I can't say yes, I think that we're going to get, various grants. So, we are pursuing things and writing grants while this is all going on, which, can kind of be a little mind boggling. But we need to do that. I think financially, we are in a decent place. I'm pretty proud of where our organization sits, and our funders have been very transparent, and we've been in communication with them for our planning. I think as this year, again, going back to what opportunities for fundraising might help is really what's going to drive some of the costs when we kind of look into the fall and year end. I think we're already starting to think about the ripple effect into 2021, because I think right now there might be that attention and giving for this, but the cost to our community is going to have a ripple effect, and those services are going to only be in higher demand as more of those needs increase. So we are starting to already kind of project out what are some things we anticipate, even if it's insurance costs and things like that with everything going on, that we'll have to kind of think about as we head into 2021. And I think about, the recovery phase. Yes, like we actually are doing a walkthrough tomorrow to our space to relook at like even just configuration of office spaces. I think the physical safety of bringing people back to work is a huge priority. And and also just not knowing the longevity of the virus and what that's going to look like as we head into the fall. We have to reconsider how we even are set up before we bring people back. So we're also looking at it from that perspective, and also kind of what are the risks that we can kind of assess now with a clear head before maybe they're popping up in the future. So we have a kind of like the various layers here of the immediate, in it, what's happening tomorrow, what's happening next week, and what's happening next month, and 6 months from now. I think that's the only way you can think right now, because there's so many moving parts in this, and this is not going to be clean. It's not going to be nice linear way of recovery. This is going to be messy, and I think for nonprofits and the community looking at nonprofits, they have to give us some kudos for the hard work that we're doing, but also some patience of understanding all these moving parts that are being thrown at all of us, and businesses as well. I don't want to discount that, but as nonprofits, it's a little different. So I think that we are very strategic in how we're approaching our thought process. I think that I've been very proud of the creativity of our team. So I think that is the, where we're at. It's today and tomorrow is this next phase. Like, what is this going to look like? And what are some things we really have to evaluate?
That's great. And we're all feeling the same thing too. We, as nonprofits, no, disrespect to businesses, but we run lean to begin with. And now we're expected to try to do so much more. So I completely get that. Also too, there was a question that came in the same area. If you have reserves, are you prepared to use them in this time for operations? Or will you be saving those for 2021 when things could get more difficult?
Well, right now, our existing funding sources have been solid. We were able to benefit from an invite for the Western New York COVID Community Response Fund of all the private foundations that came together. So that obviously is a huge help. We did apply for the PPP loan, so that's also another component. So right now, we're not having to dip into those reserves at this point in our projections right now, but what's going to evaluate that is kind of, will the funding that is owed to us per our contracts come in on time? And will we see those things as they're supposed to as we head into the next quarter? And I think those are some things that we'll have to evaluate once we get communication from local, state, and federal entities.
Thank you. Thanks, Jess. And Tara, same question. Again, this is probably be the second last question. So Tara, can you take that one?
Sure. So, very much echo some of the things that both Karen and Jess have said. A couple other points though, and, to reiterate what I mentioned earlier, I really think we all as nonprofits have to be very concerned about, sustainability of funding going forward. The stock market is getting trashed. A lot of our funders who, would share with us the required mandatory disbursements and geez, I did really great in the stock market. I'm going to give you a percentage of my success. As that is going away, and even if that's just going away for 2 or 3 or 4 years, 2, 3, 4 years for our organizations can be a very long time if we are feeling that dry spell in our fundraising efforts. And I think we have to be cognizant that this hit on the economy is going to be a hit on all of us economically. So we're going to be right in the middle as the rope in that tug of war, where we have much more need on the left-hand side pulling on us for greater resources, and much fewer resources being given to us on the other hand of the equation. I think it's going to be a very delicate balancing act, and I think that any organizations that have any reserves at all that can hang on to them should. I think this is the time now to be conservative and careful and cautious. And think about our clients in the long run. Recklessness is not something that we should be doing as nonprofits right now. We have a responsibility to our community to try to determine how best we can stretch those dollars. But on balance to that, something that has always bothered me, and I know Althea and I have spoken a lot about this, I don't think we should be balancing all of that on the backs and the shoulders of our employees. We have for years and years and years and years as nonprofit, employees and leaders been told, you want to have as low a rate going into administration as possible. Wow, that agency has a 98%, rate for programs. Geez, that agency has a 91% rate. Oh, wow, that agency with a 72% rate, they're terrible. They're the worst. Don't give them any money. And you dig down into those numbers, and where's the hit? The hit's on the back of the employees. So we have employees standing in food lines because they have a passion to work for what we do and care for the mission. And to me, I think that should be a black eye on us as nonprofits. When we have people that are barely making minimum wage and struggling to get by because it looks good to a funder, I think we really have to question what that funder is making decisions based on. And I think it is our jobs as nonprofit leaders to help educate the community, the funders, the world about the fact that our responsibility is greater than only to the people that we serve in terms of our clients. Our responsibility is also to our employees. Our responsibility is to lead by example, by showing that, yes, we do want to take care of every single one of our clients, but we also have to take care of our employees. And I really feel like that's a paradigm, and it's an enigma that I have never really understood, why it should be a point of pride that we are not taking care of the people that are taking care of our clients.
That is so well said. Thank you very much. Because maybe things will change. You know, in times of crisis and extreme events, that's usually when change will happen. So my last question, quickly, I'm going to ask all three of the same thing. How can we help? Leadership Buffalo has 4,000, just about 4,000 graduates. We're connected in the community. There's a lot of wonderful people on this call. How can we help? And let us know. We will share it with our network. Karen.
Well, obviously, we're already partners with you, so we're happy about that. Just keep spreading the word. I mean, what Tara just said is absolutely true. If all of the not-for-profits got together and worked on communicating that message, we'd all be better off, and people would be more willing to give funding that is needed and is appropriate to be able to deliver service and have well-paid employees that, you know, fits the need that's being handled. But in addition to that, I would just say keep pushing the message out there. There's a lot of agencies and programs that on the volunteerwny.org site that we co-manage with the Service Collaborative. They need lots of in-kind donations. They need volunteers, remote volunteers. Keep asking people to check there. There's something for everyone, regardless of whether you're willing to do it in person or whether you want to do it remotely. There's lots of ways to help right now, and that's really the best thing to do. And then, of course, give money.
When you can. Jess and Karen. Let's start with Jess, same question.
I would say to continue to support our organizations. Sorry, sorry, my phone's not muted. Apologize for that. Is to continue to care for agencies like ours after this. You know, stuff quickly can kind of fade our memory. So I think this is a long-term game that we have to play together and kind of support each other through. I will say though, I think from our mission perspective, what I would ask of everybody, and I feel that this experience has really helped highlight our mental health as well as our physical health at this time, is that each and every, you know, member to be conscious of your mental health needs, the mental health needs of your family, friends, colleagues, and know that there's resources available to reach out to connect to. You know, in addition to the day-to-day right now, my concern is the safety, the lives that we're going to have to continue to save here as a result of the layered effect of this crisis. So I think for me, it's just for us to be more compassionate, more aware, and really paying attention to each other's needs and you know, empathy, you know, just really being compassionate at this time and helping people feel comfortable to reach out for help and support. You know, we push our hotline regularly. We want people to call for support and guidance. Our counselors are there, and you don't have to be in a heightened crisis to call. I think the more people can get that care now, the better off our community as a whole is going to be. So I would charge everybody to just be very aware, be very compassionate, have empathy, and also share the resources that exist that are available right now for everybody to tap into for that support.
And we'll also share your virtual fundraiser that you're doing. So we'll get that out there. Tara, same question and our final question.
So I would say looking inwardly to the needs of FeedMore, the best way people can probably help us right now is with contactless food drives. And whether that means, you know, you drop off a bag of food to one of our locations or leave it on your front porch and we'll send a staff member or a volunteer to get it, particularly those proteins, fruits, and vegetables. That would be really huge for us right now for FeedMore specifically. But more globally as a community, I really feel like we have to help each other. FeedMore, again, has been very, very fortunate. We've had, you know, something up north of 120 media hits in the past 5 weeks. So we certainly are getting a lot of attention, but I am really cognizant of, you know, so many of our partners in the community that simply cannot get that level of attention. They aren't the ones in the spotlight right now. You know, let us know that. I know that, you know, folks like Jess and Karen and, you know, other leaders in this community want to help every single other nonprofit in this community. This isn't about being territorial. It's not about your organization does this and you're somehow stepping on my toes. If we do that, we all fail. At the end of the day, we have to help each other. And, you know, my team members all are, you know, super talented, super creative. Call us, let us help each other, shoot us an email. Maybe we can open a door. Maybe we can make a phone call. Maybe we can share something that we've learned. Maybe we make a few mistakes together along the way. That's okay. But I really think that if we aren't helping each other and knitting a tapestry of support in this community, there's no way that we're going to be able to deal with COVID over the next 18 months. And that's really, where we need to be. So, I, for one, have placed many a phone call to Jess through the course of this, because I know we need her team's help right now. She's been gracious and selfless and, emailing me back all hours of the night. And I really think we need to all do that with each other. We need to lend each other a helping hand now more than ever.